Both Arsenal and Manchester City lose, Liverpool win. That is the headline. Robbie Earl, Tim Howard, Rebecca Lowe with you. Robbie, your reaction to Manchester City's defeat against Bournemouth? Well, don't take anything for granted in this league, Rebecca. I said before the game, there's two things with Areola's team. They're dangerous and they're respected now in this league. The only unbeaten record's gone. First defeat in the Premier League in the calendar year. First time Bournemouth have ever beaten Manchester City in the Premier League, and it was deserved, and back-to-back defeat for City now in the League Cup and in the Premier League Cup and in the Premier League. We don't see this often. I know that there were supposedly players who weren't available, he was short of numbers, but there's one surprise for me, and I kept seeing a shot of Kevin De Bruyne who's on the bench. He was needed and he wasn't put on the pitch. We'll have to find out what was going on there. Tim, Nottingham Forest, top 3 of the Premier League, you look as surprised as I've seen you. Yeah, I just like what Nuno's doing. I think he goes about his business the way he sets his team up, and he was an upgrade when they brought him in. And Chris Wood is, for me, for the money, for that size club, he's great value. You know he's going to get into the double digits. Right now, I believe he has 8 goals or something crazy like that at this point. He might even get to 20 goals. You look at where they are. They're singing a sweet tune. They won't finish there, but they're in a great position. They won the European Cup. Maybe they can win the Champions League. Who knows? Yeah, you never know. Southampton needed that badly for Russell Martin, didn't they? They did, and we talked about the League Cup, and teams often used to want to get out of that competition. They won against Stoke 3-2. It wasn't plain sailing. They got the winner in the end later on, but that win brings confidence and a win to the dressing room. They go and put that back-to-back. Russell Martin has said, "We will do it our way." That will give them a lot of confidence that they are heading in the right direction. Yeah, and that result also puts more pressure on the Wolverhampton Wanderers manager Gary O'Neill. Premier League managers have been reacting to the new arrival today, and this is what they've had to say. Welcome to United, to England, and I congratulate him. Next Tuesday we face each other as a team 2 or 3 seasons ago in the Champions League, so welcome. He has a good reputation. He's a little younger than you. I'm getting old. First of all the best to him. Again, if the people in charge took that decision, it's because they think it's the correct one. All the best to him, and all the best to Man United. He'll be a really good fixture, but you expect that sort of quarter-final, semi-final stage of any competition. I only just heard that Ruben's been appointed, so he'll have his feet firmly under the desk by then. I'm looking forward to meeting him. I know something about Ruben Amorim, because we play sometimes in front. I think he's doing very good work in Portugal, in Sporting Lisbon. If Man United decided to appoint him, I think it's because he deserves it. Man United come to Portman Road is always going to be a huge game and one to look forward to. Of course, now they're going to be led by a new manager, so that's going to add more interest to it. I wish them all the best. Of course, it's a club I have an affinity with and always want to see them do well. Hopefully not on the game that is coming up, but other than that, I wish them all the best. I'm sure he'll be a good addition to the league. I know him, we played Sporting twice when he was the manager and I was the Frankfurt manager. 1 win, 1 loss, and he did great work there. Let's see. Excellent record, haven't seen loads of his stuff. I know they play very good football. I know he'll bring big personality and obviously an incredible club. I'm sure he's really looking forward to it. I think he's a brilliant coach. I've watched a lot of his team. I think they're a really good team. I really admire the way his team plays, and I think he'll do a brilliant job for Man United. I think it's a really good appointment, but I'm not the man to give him any advice at all. He arrived to a big club because he has been really successful in the previous clubs, in Braga, in Sporting. For sure, he has the level and I cannot give him any advice. Someone that I know well, a friend. It's always important to see a friend going in the direction that was his ambition too. Of course, what I can say at this moment is I congratulate him for the move. I know that was difficult for him to make the decision, but I congratulate him for the move. I'm saying that he's a very good coach, definitely. I wish him all the best just against Hazard. A reminder of this afternoon's big breaking news. Ruben Amorim is Manchester United's new head coach, signing a deal until the summer of 2027 with the option of a further year. He'll join the club on the 11th of November at the start of the next international break. We have heard from Jamie Carragher already this hour. Now let's speak to our chief reporter Nolan Baker. What do we think, Ben? Is this the right man for the job? Well, let's wait and see, but I think Manchester United have moved very quickly. It was only on Monday that they decided to sack Erik ten Hag. A couple of days later, Friday, they've got Ruben Amorim. Now, everybody knows what a great young coach he's in. I think the risk is that he's only managed in the Portuguese league, but he's done a fabulous job with Sporting. So this is going to be a bigger challenge, but he is the best person who is available at the moment as long as you had the 10 million to trigger his release clause. I think the only sort of disappointment for United perhaps is that they have to wait until the international break before he comes in, but I'm not sure that's that much of a bad thing because Ruud van Nistelrooy seems to have started off really well. There's a sort of feel-good factor back around the club and the fans have got Ruud in charge for another 3 games and they've got Ruben Amorim to look forward to. You said there that there might be a little bit of a frustration that he doesn't come in and start work until that international break in 10 days' time. But do you think Manchester United will be pleased that over the course of this week they've managed to get everything sorted? Signed and here he is? Well, yes, because you know the last thing they wanted is a drawn-out saga where they would be having to interview lots of different managers and there'd be lots of reports about things that were happening and it could affect performances on the pitch. We basically know that all clubs have a succession plan in place. I think a couple of weeks ago United's hierarchy would have been aware of the fact that things weren't going particularly well under Erik ten Hag. There was this famous Ineos monthly executive committee meeting in central London 3 weeks ago, so I'm sure during that meeting they would have talked about what they could do going forward if results didn't improve under Erik ten Hag, and I think their number 1 target was Ruben Amorim, so then it was just a case of sounding out his representatives, seeing if he did want to come to Manchester United, and once the decision was made to part company with Erik ten Hag, they moved very, very quickly. But the most important thing here is that Ruben Amorim said yes, even though Sporting are top of the table. They've got 100% record, they've scored 30 goals this season, only conceded 2 goals, they're doing really well in the Champions League as well. He just thought that opportunities like Manchester United don't come around very often, and when they do, you have to grab them with both hands. What about the significance then that Ruben Amorim is Manchester United's head coach, not Manchester United's manager? I think it's the first time Manchester United have had a head coach, but I think it tells you more about modern football than it does about Manchester United. You know, most managers are head coaches now, the kind of people who are buying football clubs. They like to have a modern structure in place. No directors of football, sporting directors, technical directors, recruitment directors. The head coach is just another hire. But of course, when it comes to the football side of the operation, he is the most important hire. And I think he may prove to be the final piece of the jigsaw when it comes to Ineos' rebuilding of Manchester United. We've seen, for instance, new sporting director, new technical director, new chief executive come in. Ruben Amorim is their man. He's their first managerial head coach hire. You know, of course, they decided to stick with Erik ten Hag during the summer. So in a way, that was a decision. Looking back, they would say, okay, that was the wrong decision, but hindsight is a wonderful thing to have. You're always going to make mistakes. I think what Ineos realized is we made a mistake. If we stick with Erik ten Hag, we're in danger of missing out on the top 4. We need to make a change quickly and credit them for doing exactly that. I think we just had a little look there on the screen as to what this new structure might look like under Ineos, and as you said, he potentially is. They will hope so that the final piece of the jigsaw, missing out on top 4, then that would be the target that at the moment the sky is not quite there. Limit in Manchester United and maybe competing with the likes of Chelsea and Tottenham and Aston Villa for 4th this season. Look, I think what Ruben Amorim has to do is get United back in the top 4. We heard Erik ten Hag talk a lot about winning cups, League Cup, FA Cups. Yes, it's great to win those trophies as well, but I think the most important thing for Manchester United's owners is to get back into the top 4 and get back into the Champions League, and I think that's still possible. If you look at the league table, United are only 7 points off 4th place. There's still, 3/4 of the season to go, and just remember what happened to Ruben Amorim in his first season in charge of Sporting. I think when he took over the previous season, Sporting had finished 4th in his first season. They were champions. I'm not saying that's going to happen this time around. Just to clarify, I'm saying give him a little bit of time, and I think he could have a major impact. Just on that point about Champions League as well, the other route into it is by winning the Europa League, which is where Manchester United are. Yeah, I mean, they're not doing very well in the Europa League at the moment, haven't won a game yet, drawn all their games. I think they've got another game coming up next week against PAOK Salonika. Ruud van Nistelrooy will be in charge for that. But yes, that is another route into the Champions League. A club as big as Manchester United needs to be in the Champions League, and when they're in the Champions League, they need to be competitive, because last time they were in it, the performances were woeful. Well, welcome back. Just to expand a little bit more on some of the points that Ben was making there. Good afternoon. As Ben said, there are a few technicalities which probably explains why there is a little bit of a delay. I mean, the reason for the delay is that Sporting need to make sure that everything is done properly, that they're happy with all the paperwork before it is officially announced. They've also got to inform the Portuguese stock exchange as well. Look, we were told yesterday that from Sporting's perspective the deal was done, it was a done deal. They've known all along that Ruben Amorim wants to go to Manchester United, and they've known that there's very little they can do about it because he's got this release clause. But once United told them earlier this week that they wanted to trigger that release clause, then Sporting's mindset was okay, he's going, but we've got to make sure that our interests are protected and respected. And that is why talks began about an extra compensation payment, also compensation payments for the coaches Amorim wants to take with him, and also this notice period. Now, to begin with, my information yesterday was that Sporting wanted to keep Amorim for his full notice period, so effectively for another month. But they were willing to negotiate, and I think the middle ground I was told yesterday lunchtime could be this international break, and this is what Sporting are doing. They are saying, look, we don't want him to leave straight away to hop on a private jet and fly to Manchester and be paraded to United fans before the Chelsea game. We need him here for our next 3 games. We've got a game tomorrow night against Estrella. We've got a very important Champions League game on Tuesday against Manchester City. Then a week on Sunday we're away at Braga. Once those 3 games are out of the way, he can leave, and that is what is going to happen, and that is what will be confirmed today. So how do you see this next 10 days or so until he officially starts as a Manchester United manager, taking shape for him and for Sporting as a club? Well, it's going to be very strange for the club and also for him. Starting in less than an hour's time when he's going to be holding a news conference, we're there. Gail Davis, my colleague, is there. She'll be asking him questions. But I think the next few days and weeks will prove that he has the personality and the character to be the manager of Manchester United. I'm not saying he's going to be a success, let's wait and see, because we've been down this road before with other people who we've thought were going to be a success. But I feel that he's got the respect of Sporting fans, and he's the kind of character who can pull this off. It's going to be very tricky for him because he's going to be wearing 2 hats for the next sort of 10 days or so, and the game against Manchester City, there's going to be so much interest in that. But I think he can handle it. As regards the club, I think they're a little bit disappointed, of course, that he's leaving at the start of the season after just 9 or 10 games. They're expecting him to stay until at least the summer, but they have a succession plan in place and they've always known that he was going to leave. He's so highly respected and highly regarded. People at Sporting saying to me he's the new special one. He's regarded in Portugal as being the best Portuguese manager since Jose Mourinho, and they are used to exporting their managers and their players. And they're very proud of the fact that Portugal has produced a player as great as Cristiano Ronaldo, a manager as great as Jose Mourinho, and I think Ruben Amorim could be somebody who we could be talking about in the next few years in the same sort of breath as people like Jose Mourinho. I mean, it's a massive challenge for him, but he had a pretty big challenge at Sporting and he's been very successful during his time there. We'll clip that up and remind you of it in a couple of seasons, Carvey, depending on how he does at Manchester United. But it's interesting you said there that Sporting are proud. That there is an expectation that if you succeed at a club like Sporting, eventually a bigger club will come calling it, and we saw something similar, I guess, at the end of last season when Arne Slot got a lovely send-off before he headed off to Liverpool. You'd expect to see that from the Sporting fans in the next week or so. Well, I'm not sure, let's wait and see. I was told that the atmosphere at the game on Tuesday night, I think it was that they played, that was like a funeral apparently at their stadium. The people celebrating in Portugal at the moment are Porto and Benfica fans. They're absolutely delighted that he is going, but I think there'll be mixed emotions. On the one hand, Sporting fans, of course, are really upset and disappointed that he's leaving, but I think on the other hand, they are very, very proud that a club of the stature of Manchester United have come in for their head coach. The Ruben Amorim CV looks strong. 2-time Portuguese League winner, 3-time Portuguese League Cup winner. He's been manager of the season in Portugal on 2 occasions. In terms of what United are getting, if this all goes through and he does arrive at Old Trafford, listen, some in Portugal are calling him the best coach they've seen in that country since the days of Jose Mourinho. Do you feel he is the right fit for United? Do you feel he's as good as the fuss around him would suggest? I think if that appointment happens, the players will embrace that like you can't believe. I think they're going to be over the moon with someone that plays forward-thinking, on the front foot, attacking football, dynamic intensity, aggressive in their possession, aggressive when they haven't got the ball. And I think we're going to see a massive improvement from these players, which is wrong in terms of you should not have to be motivated to play for any football club, let alone Manchester United. That didn't happen under Ten Hag. Now, I think with this man coming in, he's just going to give them that lift. I think even in the interim period under Van Nistelrooy, I think you're going to see players, a bit of a cloud just shift over the training ground, over the stadium now, and there's going to be a big shift with Manchester United now. Like we said, it's really important to let the people know out there that you just can't discard players and bring a new lot in with the restraints now. Get the man in now, let him have a look at them in training, because that's where you see a lot, we know ourselves. It's all right watching them on the pitch, watch them every day in training, get to know them, have the conversations, decide which ones you want to take with you and the ones you want out. Let Jason Wilcox and Dan Ashworth know about that, let them do their work. And then, when the January transfer window opens, then maybe you want one or two, because at the moment, looking from the outside, you would say, if I was him, I'd say, well, there's like 10 that need to leave here, but it ain't going to be the case. He'll work with some of these will shock us, and they'll be unrecognizable from the 10 Hag days. You'll say, where did he turn up from? Where did we know that? Because this man might go, you know what, I'll use him in this position. I want to play with wingbacks. This one can play there. He will know the little detail, what he will learn in training about these guys. Ugarte, who has hardly kicked a ball for Ten Hag, we know he knows him. He's best footballer he's had when he's been at Sporting. Now, he needs to then decide, what do I need in January? Does he bring in Marcus Edwards with him, a little superstar who went from Tottenham to Sporting? Do we bring in Corquez, who's absolutely on fire at the moment? I would suggest 100% that boy comes in, because they're starved of centre forwards. They've got Højlund and they've got Xerxes, who's not a centre forward anyway. But they've got to get players out. But they've got to get players in, get them out before you can bring them in. They won 80 to 90 million pounds, and that's the problem now when he's gone there and done well. So now you're going, right, we've got a new manager, we're going to back them fully like that, but they've already spent, you saw the money they've already spent. It's a fair amount, and Toby, he'll have seen United play plenty of times. There is a difference, obviously, in what Tim's saying when you see them in the flesh for the first time on the training pitch as well. But when he looks at that United team, some might say, well, where on earth do you start? But if you're pinpointing one particular area, he's going to have to address pretty quickly. Would the midfield be one of them? I don't think it's just one area, Simon, I've got to be honest. But that area's never really been solved, has it? No, it hasn't. But, you go back to, again, Manchester United teams that you would expect to be scoring bundles of goals really good from an attacking point of view. I don't see that when they play anymore. Defensively, it's just mishmash, in terms of where's the partnerships, whether it's whose centre are, whether it's, full back. And there just seems to be a real lack of direction across the playing style and the philosophy. So for me, it is a complete rebuild. We talk about players coming in. What players has he actually improved, that he inherited? Any of them. Rashford, look what's happened to him, during his time there. So there's so many different aspects that he's going to need to go in. I do agree from a playing point of view, there'll be a cloud that has been lifted. And I think there'll be a real intensity to the work because they know as soon as he comes in, they've got to be at it. I've never felt Ten Hag has felt comfortable at Manchester United. I just don't feel that he's ever felt, I'm the man to take this on, given the scale of the club. I think we remember him. He's got that little bit about him, and I think that means a lot to players and to fans, just that bit of charisma, that I feel he can come in there and really get things going. He's fresh, For a Man United fan, I'm loving it because you're rolling the dice. He's an entrepreneur of football management. This guy, are you running his PR campaign? No. I watched his team play against Arsenal last year, and they were impressive. They played Arsenal off the pitch, lost on penalties. But with inferior players, I think that with the midfield area, he only plays with 2 in there. So some of them might be pushed into their wing-back areas where he likes to push up and they fill up the midfield with the wing-backs. Plays 3 at the back. That opens it up. He's got enough centre halves there. But are they quick enough for him? All these sorts of things he can find out if he gets in now. Don't worry about the 30, get in now. Van Nistelrooy has said this. As I'm sure everyone can imagine, I'm writing these notes with a huge amount of mixed emotions. Erik ten Hag brought me back to Manchester United in the summer, and while I have only been part of the coaching staff here for a few months, I will always be grateful to him for giving me the opportunity, and I am saddened to see him leave. Even on an interim basis, it is a great honor to manage the club I love for however long I'm asked to do so. I can promise that I will continue to give my all in whatever capacity to try to turn around our fortunes. When I returned in the summer as Erik's assistant, it was because I believed that Manchester United can climb back to the levels that I knew here as a player. I still have that belief, but it will take time and a lot of hard work. The first step is to restore the winning habit, starting in Old Trafford this evening. I know firsthand the positive effect that our wonderful fans can have on the team, so please get behind the players as we fight together to move a step closer to Wembley. Van Nistelrooy on his future, he said, "I'm here to help Man United and give my everything for the club in any capacity. I'm helping as long as needed. In the future, in any capacity, I'm here to help the club further to build towards the future. That will never change." Sporting have announced that Manchester United have expressed their intention to pay Ruben Amorim's PS10M release clause, edging him ever closer to becoming the new manager here at Old Trafford. What does that mean in a tactical sense? I've got Carl Anker from The Athletic here to talk through it. Ruben Amorim has been the frontrunner to succeed Erik ten Hag, a very different manager in terms of his approach. He likes to play three at the back and it's very possession-heavy. What does that mean if we translate it to this current United team? It means there's going to be a lot of changes. I think if you're a Manchester United fan, a Stratford ender who's used to chanting attack, 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 and used to having dazzling wingers going down the wings, the move to a 3-4-3 or a 3-4-2-1 with wingbacks might take a little bit of time to get used to. There isn't necessarily an abundance of profiles or players to make Ruben Amorim's system a one-to-one fit in the same way that, say, Arne Slot's adjustment to life at Liverpool was quite seamless, or perhaps in the way that Enzo Maresca's adjustment to time at Chelsea has been relatively smooth because there's been such an abundance of players that can easily understand those things. What we do know is that, as you said, Amorim's style of play does involve very much retaining possession, very often pressing quite high up the field. The attack is quite multifaceted. It's not based on one regular form of attack. It can often rely on different players, one quite speedy attacker going forward or one interior player, someone like Hamad Diallo, who might be quite useful to Ruben Amorim going forward as well. What will be interesting is what he makes with that central midfield pivot. So when you look at the previous Sporting teams, the two men in midfield tend to be based on their out-of-possession qualities. They tend to be very, very athletic, being able to cover large areas of space, tend to be able to make loads of tackles. In fact, one of those people was Manuel Ugarte, who just popped up at Manchester United over the summer as well. So I think that might be quite useful for Amorim when he arrives. I think we're not quite at the stage where there's white smoke, but it's looking quite imminent now, isn't it? Yeah, so not an easy and seamless transition. But what would excite United fans by what could potentially be the look of Amorim's team? I think one thing that should excite Manchester United fans is this is a manager who has a very clear set way of playing. And I think what's going to be really interesting is that this manager has quite a clear set way of playing, and hopefully for them isn't going to be a manager who's going to compromise quite easily. And yes, it might take some time for certain players to get used to this 3-4-2-1 system. But if we look at some of the changes above and around Amorim, both in terms of recruitment, so the likes of Dan Ashworth and Jason Wilcox, that might bring effect. If Dan Ashworth has been given a very clear goal, you need to bring in players that can fit a very clear 3-4-3. That should hopefully bring some clarity to years of dysfunctional recruitment. We hope so. Manchester United fans certainly hope so. Amorim will hope so soon because it is looking very likely that he'll be in the dugout here at Old Trafford very soon. Frank aside, let's have a look at the possible runners and riders. Take us through them, Kabi. Well, one of the names in the frame is Ruben Amorim. He is somebody who has been linked with a lot of big jobs. We know West Ham were interested, Liverpool were interested in him as well. He's doing a very good job at Sporting. A couple of problems I foresee with United making a move for him is he's got a release clause. I think it's at least something like £15 million. And we also know that he is somebody who potentially in the future could become a Manchester City manager. We know that City's next director of football is going to be Hugo Viana, who's at Sporting at the moment. So I'm just thinking maybe Ruben Amorim is thinking, look, if I'm going to go to the Premier League, let's wait for the really, really big job. The job that is going to be replacing Pep Guardiola. Of course, we don't know that Pep Guardiola is going to leave anytime soon. But he is a name in the frame. He's been talking today actually about the United job. Didn't really have much to say. He was asked about, what is happening at United, Erik ten Hag losing his job. And he basically said, look, I knew this question was coming. I'm not getting involved in this. I'm very happy at Sporting. How times have changed when people are hanging around for the City job and not the United one. Xavi, lots of talk about him. We heard Jamie Carragher talk about him today. How close is it that he could get the job? I mean, how exciting would it be if Xavi became the United manager? Not just for United supporters, but for football supporters generally, because he's one of the greatest players of all time. He's completed football. He's won everything there is to win in the game. And he's also proved himself as a manager in Spain and also in Qatar as well. Now, intriguingly, he is available at the moment because he left Barcelona at the end of last season. He also speaks very, very good English. He's available. His wife as well has been on social media. Now, I'm not very big on, I think it's called Instagram or something. She put up a picture apparently on Instagram. I don't know if we can see it. That is a picture of her family. And I think in the background you can see her son, that Xavi's son, of course, wearing a Manchester United shirt. So, is that some kind of cryptic social media message that Xavi is interested in the United job? I don't know. I don't know much about Instagram, but I do know that Xavi is an incredible player and a brilliant, brilliant manager. And he would be a really exciting addition to the Premier League if he was to move to Manchester United. Do you know they have this thing called the YouTube as well? It's quite good. Gareth Southgate. The what? The YouTube. Gareth Southgate, right? He said not managing for a period of time, a year was it, I think. But surely now the United job is up for grabs. Is he back in the frame? I've got to put my cards on the table. I think Gareth Southgate is a brilliant manager. I think he did a brilliant job as the England manager. I think he gets a lot of unfair criticism. I think he would, given the chance, prove to be a very, very good Premier League manager as well. As you just mentioned though, he has come out himself in the last week or so at a sports conference and said on stage, in front of all the media, I need a break from football. I don't want to work again until at least next summer. So that would appear to rule Gareth Southgate out. But we do know. Would the fact that the fans aren't having it, would that rule him out? Because they don't want him. Well, you say that, but what do we base that on? Base that on the fact that some United fans have said we don't want him. People on social media have said we don't want him. I would say look at his CV, give him a chance. If he was to become a United manager and if he was to win games and win trophies, I think he would win those fans over. And yes, I accept what you're saying. It would be a difficult sell. But don't forget, he's got a very good relationship with some very, very senior people at Manchester United, including Dave Brailsford and Dan Ashworth, who he's worked with before. So don't totally rule him out. But he himself has said, give me a break. I need some time out because I've spent 8 years managing England. I need to recharge my batteries. And maybe we should actually respect him because you don't want him to go from all the hassle and grief of managing England to having to dive into the deep end at Old Trafford and deal with everything that's going on at Manchester United. It's like blind date this, isn't it? Next one up, Nahuel Guzman. Now, this one, I don't have any sort of information on Julian Nagelsmann and the United job myself. But there are a lot of reports in Germany. Our colleagues are looking into it as well. Everybody, of course, knows he's a brilliant manager. His sides play modern, exciting, attacking, dynamic football. He would fit the bill as somebody who could manage Manchester United. But of course, he's the manager of Germany at the moment. And I think it would be a big, big move for him to leave the Germany job, just 18 months or so before the World Cup in the USA to move to Old Trafford. Wherever he goes after Germany, he's not going to be short of offers. And I'm not sure at the moment he would look at the United job and think, this is one for me. Perhaps he would think too much of a risk. And contractually, I think it would be complicated to get him out of the Germany job. But don't forget, Jurgen Klopp has got a clause in his contract that he can get the Germany job, so perhaps. All right, last one, man who actually is in possession at the moment. How close? Well, he's the favorite at the moment. And the people who I've been speaking to today have said to me, Ruud van Nistelrooy is the one to keep a really close eye on because he wants to be a permanent manager. I don't think being an interim manager is something that he's that interested in. If he doesn't get the permanent United job, I think he will go on and be a permanent manager somewhere else. He's already been the manager of PSV, he won the Dutch Cup there, and he is a United legend. He's one of United's all-time greatest strikers. So I think if he was to prove himself over the next couple of games, you may get the same situation as we had with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, where an interim, who was a former hero, the fans love him, wins a couple of games, everyone's singing his name. There is pressure on the senior people at United to make him the permanent manager. One person I was speaking to today said a couple of the players already expect him to be the next permanent manager. Having said all that, if you look at his CV as a player, of course, you cannot argue with his record. But as a manager, does his CV mean that he should be somebody who would be getting the United job? I think he would have a lot to prove. But I think at the moment, he is the favourite because he's got the job. I hate to interrupt you, Dermot, but we have a certain reason to do so because Manchester United have sacked their manager Erik ten Hag. A statement has just appeared on the club's website, says Erik was appointed in April 2022 and led the club to 2 domestic trophies, winning the Carabao Cup in 2023 and the FA Cup in 2024, and Manchester United say, "We are grateful to Erik for everything he has done during his time with us and wish him well for the future." Ruud van Nistelrooy will take charge of the team as interim head coach, supported by the current coaching team, whilst the permanent head coach is recruited. So that 2-1 defeat for Manchester United at London Stadium yesterday, that big late penalty which we've spoken about with Dermot this morning, has led to Erik ten Hag leaving his post. Sue, I asked the question a little bit earlier on this morning, how much longer can they give it? Clearly no longer. No, and I was sort of looking at it earlier on in the season, would it be till Christmas? Let's see where Manchester United are at that point. They've clearly thought that the time's right. It just seems a bit bizarre that in the summer they were clearly looking for a new manager. They didn't quite get who they wanted. They thought they'd stick with ten Hag. They backed him. They'd give him the money, but now they just think Manchester United, when you look at the position that they're in, 14th in the table, it's just not good enough for a club of that magnitude, and they clearly think that they've got the right person, whether that's Van Nistelrooy in the interim. Whether that's moving forward or they've got somebody else in the background. But yeah, you say it's a surprise at the timing of it. I thought maybe we'd look to see what happened at Chelsea next week before the international break, but they clearly think that the time's right now.